And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right, I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved it so much that you came back for more. Folks, I don't blame you. That was a sharp decision. We have a lot more for you. We have a fantastic guest today. He is going to absolutely keep you hopping. There's lots going on, there's lots for us to talk about. And the reason that is because this is the podcast that is about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And my guest today, you guessed it, you cracked the code, is a podcaster. Folks, this is the place where we all come together to lift each other up, and this is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's get sailing and bring in our guest today, three-time best-selling author, host of the Potpourri Place Podcast Show. Please welcome Paul H. Flowers Jr. to the show. Paul, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Look, I was getting ready to press the button on my invisible podcasting board that does the right, the automatic clapping sound. I don't actually have that board in my setup, but I had someone do that to me one time. Like they pressed the button after something. I'm like, whoa, I need to step my game up, right? So I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for asking, Rory.
Well, I appreciate it. I got to let everybody know. You and I were talking a little bit in the pre, interview, and you are having a lot of fun being in the guesting chair right now, and I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Close to 40 episodes in a relatively condensed amount of time as a host. It's nice to actually have questions asked and to have someone so eloquent at doing so, right? I've got a chance to just briefly hear a snippet of how your audio sounds again, because like I shared, I'm traveling for this particular recording. But then having this pre-conversation, knowing that you've been doing this for years and you've got like this broadcaster voice. So it's going to be easy to listen to you ask questions and then provide appropriate responses as everyone doesn't have the voice for it, right? And again, everyone can, and some people are just easier on the ears, if you know what I'm saying.
I appreciate that very much. Thanks. And I didn't pay him for any of that, folks. I mean, this is unsolicited testimonial right now. So I'm not
Absolutely.
sure if I'm going to get an invoice later on, but we'll look
Well,
into that.
I'll save those for the carriers.
There you go. Listen, Paul, we have a lot to cover, and you got a great story, you got a great podcast. So, but why don't we just kind of get started with? I know the audience wants to know who is Paul H. Flowers Jr. What are you about, and what brings you here today, brother?
I love the fact that you use the full name because I put that name on everything purposely. I learned some time ago when I just used Paul Flowers that there's in the state of Illinois where I was born and raised, and when I initially started doing searches on names for random reasons that I'm sure we'll get into, realized that there were 63 Paul Flowers in the state of Illinois. And it's kind of a shock to realize that as unique as you think you are, right, as unique as I thought that I was, there were 63 more me's in this state alone, in the state of Illinois alone. And had I broadened that search, I'm sure we would have found dozens, if not hundreds more. So I use the full name and I appreciate you utilizing that. There's a special reason also that I like middle names, and I'll share that again. I think we'll get to the end and I'll share more of that. We'll circle back to it. But I'm a junior. My father preceded me, obviously preceded me in death, but he passed when I was 3. So that does also provide the ability for me to pay homage to my father by being a junior, though I only had a handful of memories of them that uh, shaped who I am today because of who I decided to be based on who I didn't know existed and wasn't there to guide me through those years that I believe are formidable. So we'll go back to go forward. Again, born and raised Chicago, Illinois, South Side, and beautiful life for the most part. Although my father passed, it was just myself, my mother, and my sister, who's 3 years my senior. We did okay, right? My mom worked in banking and at some point early retired. I guess, she had the finances to do so, which is great. Private Catholic school for 13 years and went through a unique phase, right, in high school where all boy private Catholic high school, Mount Carmel, for those that know, it's different with the last name like Flowers. Okay. So as Flowers, I got called every single flower you can think of, right? There's one that I still can barely pronounce, the chrysanthemum, that one, right? Google
Right.
chrysanth something and you're good.
That's the one. Yeah.
And that being able to be around people in that specific environment, meaning all boy private Catholic high school, south side of Chicago, specifically Mount Carmel, where you you'd be surprised to know that in a predominantly out neighborhood that are people of color, right, African American descent, on the south side of Chicago, it's 95, 98%, right? And in this little pocket at 6410 South Dante, I was the minority versus the majority, right? Which is my area. I became the minority, which I was okay with because that ultimately, to me, helped to transition into university, which is SIUC. So shout out to my Salukis down in Carbondale, because I went to a place and I began to grow through this place where everybody didn't look like me. So one of the things that I'll just kind of drop nuggets in between, and say that it makes a difference when you step outside of your comfort zone and you can be comfortable around people that are not like you. Not better, not worse, just different. Fast forward into college, I go away. I'm 17, going away to college for the first time as a second semester freshman. Took some CLEP tests. I had already went to school early, and I had the opportunity to skip a grade, which means I would have started college at 16. And I'm glad I didn't. I learned some things along the way, and that's part of the testimony. But I didn't skip a grade. I was just put in school early. So I went to college as a second semester freshman. And going 5 hours away and having that freedom, right? The freedom to be who and what and how you want it to be. Oh man, it does something to you. I saw your cup. You were at IU, right? How far away was that from home?
I use about 3 hours south of where I'm at.
Okay, and did
Yeah.
did you go away and stay on campus when you were there?
I didn't actually go to IU. It's funny.
Oh,
I have kids that went here, and that's why I have the mug.
okay.
So
Look.
it's all
Look.
good
I
though.
can't.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can't get out of the seat to ask questions, right? Even though I'm on this side telling the
No,
story.
no problem
Um,
though. But I went
so,
to the University of Oklahoma, another state you drove through here recently.
ha.
Yeah, which is
Okay.
a whole other story, which we're not getting into today because this is about you, thank goodness.
Well,
But yeah, I'm a Sooner born and bred in my heart.
that's so funny. So OU,
Yeah.
right? Guess where I went for my master's? OSU.
Oh, I'm really sorry. And
Come
folks, it's been really nice
on.
talking to Paul today, but that ends our podcast, and we'll.
Come on. You telling me you're not a Pistol Pete fan? Go Pokes, baby.
Oh,
Right?
actually, I really actually I like Oklahoma State because they've never really been a threat to OU, so it's been kind of nice.
Ah,
So.
nice, nice. I love it. I love it. I love it.
All right. Anyway,
See,
I digress. You were telling a great story.
no, and it's all a part of it, because I didn't realize how much of a difference that college makes, in your debt. In your debt. Didn't
This is
expect
true.
that one, huh? Right. So
Right.
it was for what I went to school for, which, my mother told me that I should be a doctor from the age I was 7 to 17. So all I knew was, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, right? Because that's essentially what I was told. And in our community, one of the more prominent shows that would actually show people of color in a positive light was the Cosbys. So I guess that might be where my mother got it from, and then passed that influence in down to me,
Hmm.
because of course, not only was I going to be a doctor, but specifically an obstetrician gynecologist, and I think that might have been the same as Dr. Huxtable. So
Maybe.
didn't realize it at the time, but I had some influence from good old Dr. Huxtable, and didn't even realize it. But as I grew into myself, I learned that that wasn't my dream. Like, even though I tried to make it mine and said, well, I want to bring these ignorant lives into the world, and really just usher them in. And I think that would be this really noble position. And then I realized it, and I started looking around. This world's screwed up. Why would I want to commit my life to bringing people into this world that is screwed up, right? And I'm being kind for the sake of, the listeners. But there's another word that I'd really like to say, okay? And that it just hit me so hard when I realized that I'm like, you know what? I was set to graduate at 20, and then go into, all the other programs, all that stuff. But funny story, my sister, who was 3 years older than me, I love her. So Fallon, when you hear this, don't get mad. Um, she hadn't graduated yet. Right? She went to Western Illinois University, and, had some fun first year away from home, learned some lessons the hard way, which I'm so thankful for my sister because I learned lessons through her experiences, so I didn't have to learn those lessons. And, I'm just super thankful for her even till today. So when we will talk about my podcast, and she was a large part of the inspiration for actually just doing it. Right. So like I said, we'll get into that. Shout out to my lovely sister. The So she didn't graduate yet, and here I am set to graduate. And what most people don't know about my story is they're like, oh, he was a smart one. Not that she wasn't, but I would always get praised for it because, school was really easy to me. The subjects came really easy to me. Learning was really easy to me. The short learning curve from then still exists today, which is why starting this company I recently started was very easy. And I didn't need the official training like we're supposed to have. I just got the certification, talked to a few people, and then got out here and I'm doing the thing. So I learned a lot of lessons from watching her. And then when it came to graduate, I didn't want to graduate before her. So instead of finishing up at 20 with the undergrad in biological sciences, I stopped taking classes for my degree and I started taking minors, or I started picking up minors. So for anyone that's graduated from undergrad, you know how many credits it typically takes to graduate. Well, by the time I graduated with my bachelor's, I had 214, I think.
You really
Yeah,
love your sister.
so I ended up, bachelor's in biological sciences with the automatic minors, which were chemistry and physics. And then I got minors in what I actually enjoyed, which was marketing, psychology. And then I had partial minors in speech and political science. And it was partial because of the last classes that I need for those. I just didn't finish them. I got pissed off with school. I said, I'm done and left SIU. Technically hadn't graduated yet and went to Georgetown to do a program there. I was in AmeriCorps, so I've got this whole philanthropic side of me, which, like I said,
Hmm.
we'll touch on later. I started teaching when I was with AmeriCorps down at SIUC, and through those 2 years, I was invited into the Leader Corps program. That then fast forwarded me to again ending my time at SIU and going to Georgetown in 2009 for their the Fund for American Studies program, which a highly selective program in DC, staying on Georgetown campus. And when I say again, being away, had the time of my life. I was a bit older than most of the people there. I also learned how philanthropy really worked as the program, the umbrella is the Fund for American Studies. And then inside the program, there are four different tracks. And me coming from AmeriCorps, which is more of a philanthropic organization, I ended up in the Institute of Philanthropy and Volunteer Services. Now, this story has nothing to do with Georgetown as far as they're supporting what I'm about to say, but I've got to say it, right? We're here to talk about things that make you. So um, I'm in Georgetown and brought my five speaker setup with the subwoofer for the summer. I bring my projector because I like to watch things big. I don't believe in buying $8,000 televisions. I'll buy a $500 projector and shoot the same thing on a big bright wall, right? To me, it's just more economical, but I like things in a nice way that I can see them. So I bring that too, because I had it in my dorms at school, and we're gonna have a party, me and the three roommates that I had. So get this. There's a liquor store. It's a mom and pop type of liquor store. And I just had to give this a whirl. Um, we go in the liquor store and I tell them who I am, what I'm here to do, right? Why I'm at this program at Georgetown. And I tell them that I'm having a party on campus and that I would like to promote their liquor store. So they have their own store branded liquor, right? I think you know where this is going. They let me walk out of there. They gave it to me in a nice bag and said, thank you. They gave me a handle, not a little bottle, not a fit. They gave me a handle of vodka for my party so that I can promote their liquor store throughout the rest of the summer. If that isn't philanthropy, I don't know what is. They were
Uh,
truly in a giving spirit. And though it was more like, unpaid promotion, I find that story really interesting because we don't often receive because we don't ask.
Right.
Okay. And sometimes when we ask in a way that's only for us, as opposed to being able to create an opportunity in the world of that other person. A win-win situation says that, yes, I'd like a thing, and whatever that thing is, it should create some equal value or opportunity for you. And in this instance, the equal value and opportunity was the fact that people absolutely went back to that store, right? And I absolutely did 100% of what I said was promoted that particular store so that any other above age, right, student that was there for the program that wanted to go and buy beverages for their nightcaps or whatever, I promoted that store very heavily during that party. So it undoubtedly at least got him one customer, I'm sure. But we receive not because we ask not. So that was the lesson there. Fast forward, I come back to Chicago and I stumble upon a fiance and a family, insta family, if you will. The my son's mother had two children prior to, and that's a funny story we won't dive too far into. But she had two children, and my thoughts were, whenever I became a father, Rory, I said I'd be the best father ever. So being a person that has gone through AmeriCorps, which again, I'm teaching fourth and fifth grade pullout students. I've worked at a program in Chicago called Sprout, where I had a team of three and we were overseeing 40 children for that summer. I'd been the camp counselor for the preschool that I used to go to many, 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 many years ago. And all the Carbondale mentoring program, list goes on. All these ways that I'd been in and around children, and I'd begun personal development at this time. I figured, hey, I can pour that into someone else. And it doesn't matter if there are children involved or not, because again, there's a need. And if there's a need and we can fill that need, even temporarily, then it's time well spent. So we got together and had a, you know, good time. I think I proposed after a year. The way in which I wanted to get married didn't end up being the way that she wanted to get married. So lesson there is, hey, set it out in the beginning, either get agreement or move on, and that's entirely okay. So from that, we didn't end up getting married in the month of January of 2012, which is what I wanted after proposing in December of 2011. Now, people say, wow, why would you going to get married so fast? Well, much like anything, right? The universe likes speed. And if you're going to do something, if you feel you're committed to it and you're wanting to do it, right? Whatever it is, take fast lessons, take fast losses. And that's what I'd like to live by. Well, she didn't want to take that particular route. And then we end up having my beautiful baby boy 11 months after that. And the relationship kind of spiraled up, down, and in between for the next few years. Lesson I learned through that is, again, be who you are, right? I had changed and altered who I knew myself to be to lean into her world. And there's a quote that I can't recall right now. I've got to get better at pulling my quotes to actually give, pay credit to the person that says it first. Uh, was basically, don't let someone else dim your light.
Hmm.
And I turned my brightness down for the sake of not wanting to shine too brightly. Um, Ironically enough, I heard that later in a few corporate settings, and like I said, I'm sure we may touch on that in a bit. But yeah, that's kind of how I brought myself into fatherhood. Side note, one of the reasons why I'm telling all these parts of the story, aside from just being a long-winded storyteller at times, is that it ties into my podcast, which is the Potpourri Place.
Yeah.
We are more than just what we do, is one of the things that I wholeheartedly believe. We come from success, we come from struggle, some come from silver spoons, and it's all good, right? It's all okay. All these things have part in us creating who we are today. And I choose those words specifically because it doesn't create who we are today. It has a part in creating who we are today. So we can take it and make it our reasoning for why something is the way it is or isn't going forward. Or we can take it, realize that it was a lesson that we needed to learn, leave it in the past, and then still realize that we have the space and opportunity in front of us to do something different, right? So it's a frame of thought, right? Paradigm and a frame of reference. So that's why I'm sharing these stories. So first child, I'm a father, and I find myself at this point in corporate insurance. So part of the story I skipped out on of why I got into personal development was while I was an undergrad, started with prepaid legal. And I'm remembering the story that the year, I believe it was 2005, got a phone call. Hey, Paul, this is my sister actually. So again, she's here. She's everywhere. She actually just texted me a few minutes ago. She says, "Hey, Paul, I got something I want to show you. It'll take about 15 minutes. You may or may not be interested." And I said, "Sure, find out what you got." You ever heard this thing called prepaid legal? And I said, "Prepaid legal? Is that thing with those attorneys?" She said, "Yeah, you heard of it?" I said, "Yeah, somebody tried to sign me up for that a year ago. Sign me up." She's like, "But I didn't even tell you about it." I said, "You know what? I don't care what it is, but whatever it is, it would have saved me the $2,500 that I paid for these attorneys to keep these tickets off my record." Because again, I was 20, 19 and 20. No, I was 20. This was all 20 yeah. I was 20 years old and I got two speeding tickets in a 12-month period under the age of 21. The tickets were for 95 and a 65, but the point is that I got two of them. Look, the universe likes speed, and I knew that before I knew that apparently. Apparently the law enforcement officers didn't like my philosophy though. So,
I
hey,
yeah, I can see that.
yep. The one of my mentors, Mel Roberson, says, I move with a sense of purpose. And I borrowed that from him some years ago, and I still use it today. I was moving with a sense of purpose,
I don't think
and
he
at
meant
that,
it 95 miles an hour.
you know, he's a sharp guy, and shout out to the gentleman of Cap Alpha Psi. He definitely moves with purpose. Maybe he might, if he's a sports car, I can see him doing a buck five. Um, I digress. So she shares this with me, and I tell her at that point, just sign me up. I didn't know at that time that this little $20 a month service would change the way that I viewed life, would change the way that I viewed people, and all these things because of a $20 a month service. So, why and how did this $20 a month service do all these things? Well, like I said, two speeding tickets, 12-month period under the age of 21, ended up driving and getting pulled over for a DWB, which they actually just said it was tinted windows. You're like, what's a DWB? Are you familiar with the DWB?
No, I don't actually know that one.
Driving while brown. Okay. It's a real thing. It happens in all corners of our country. But again, I digress. It totally changed since then. I may even talk about that. We got so much to cover. Um, so I got pulled over in the parking lot of my apartment building. And it turns out at that time, because of those two tickets in a 12-month period under the age of 21, they revoked my license. Well, I had moved from the dorms to an apartment and missed the memo, but the system didn't miss the memo. So I ended up being escorted out of the parking lot of where I parked my car. My vehicle's parked my car, got out, and ended up wearing Tiffany bracelets, the silver
Oh my
ones,
goodness.
in the back of a police vehicle to campus police station. And that's why I had to hire an attorney because at the time I was slated for pre-med and having a record, even if it's the driving record, that is a conviction of a felony, which that would be a felony, it would basically disqualify me from medical school. So all my little savings I had, a few $1,000s, I had to basically drain it to hire attorneys to keep this off my record. Well, I didn't learn my lesson, and I go to Chicago, not realizing that Chicago police have access to the same system, but I'm like, yo, I need to drive while I'm up here. There's a thing called a Chicago stop. And if any of the podcasters are from Chicago, basically, or not from Chicago, excuse me, those that aren't from Chicago, let me explain what that is. Uh, it's basically when you get to a stop sign and you see the stop sign, you acknowledge the stop sign's presence. But that rock back that they teach you in driver's ed, you don't really need to rock back, right? We're just about that forward motion. So as long as nobody's coming from the left or the right, then we acknowledge and we move on. Okay? Acknowledge and move on. Well, even though that's a nice nugget for life, it didn't work for the police officer that was on the block coming down to my left. And I ended up getting pulled over. And those same speeding tickets in the 12-month period under the age of 21 popped up again. And this time they were nice. They followed me. Now, mind you, I was 3 blocks from my house. This was the worst part of it is I was 3 blocks from home. They followed me to the police station a couple miles away so that they could then write me the I bond. Basically not arresting me, but saying that I'm going to show up and they've got my license and I need to show up basically. So the rest of my little savings gone.
Wow.
Fast forward back to 2005 when my sister calls and says prepaid legal, hey, sign me up. Okay. She's like, oh, well, you can make money with it too. Great. Sign me up for that too. Didn't do anything with it for a month or so. And then she calls like, hey, there's this promotion where you can earn more money for doing the same thing if you introduce this to so many people. I'm like, sure, right? Direct sales, it is a legitimate business model, but most people don't know that. And they confuse it with a pyramid scheme, which has a technical definition. Don't want to go into that now. But for those that are, oh, any direct sales and network marketing is a scam. It's no, just
No.
please be more mindful of just be more mindful, right? Go learn something. Um, so I do the things and I realized that in a weekend, and it took maybe about 2.5 hours. I'll call it four for good measure, between calling and inviting people, having them come over, watch somebody else do the presentation because we were doing DVDs at the time, and then fill out an application, send it in, and I got paid. I'm like, wait a second, this is real. This is a real thing, right? So I made like $500 over the course of 4 hours worth of work. Right? They talk about this whole broke college student thing. I said, wait a second, I don't have to be a broke college student, right? I was working as a janitor at the time. I was also working at BP as a cashier, and I also had a night job overnight working for Res Care, which we would take care of people who had PMR, or profound mental retardation. So they had various levels of PMR, and I was on the overnight shift. So I would basically, if they weren't asleep, help them get to sleep. They might have to be turned in the middle of the night because of incontinence.
Okay.
And one specific person was unable to move without the assistance of a Hoya lift, where you put this pad under them and like crank it up to get them out of bed type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's very humbling to take care of another person, another human being. Let's say that because we're all humans, but to realize that another human would rely on me for help and care in my 20s, I never thought that would be the case as an adult. Strangely enough, and I'm going to back up to go forward. My mother's mother ended up moving in with us due to Alzheimer's, and I gave up my room so that she can live in my room until I went away to college. So the last couple of years of my high school, I was taking care of a person with Alzheimer's, and it was my grandmother. So that kind of prepped me at 16, 17, or 15, 16, 17 to turn around and do it in my 20s, where instead of one lady with an issue, it's five. Uh, Again, very humbling.
Right.
So back to prepaid legal, I realized that I didn't have to work all these jobs if I just kept up some consistency, and they had bonuses and things to keep you to doing that. So ended up growing a team, basically promoting myself to the director level. And instead of getting paid like $60 to do a thing or $70 to do the thing, you get paid $200 to do the same thing. Well, in that journey of learning how to talk about this business, remember I was a janitor. So one day I'm janitoring, cleaning out someone's office, and I'm talking to somebody about prepaid legal because I'm excited. I think I had just gotten paid. I'm learning how to talk about this service. And this guy who was a floater, meaning he didn't work in our building on a regular basis, he was a floater. So he popped in every now and then. So I'd seen him once or twice in the couple years that I was working there. but we weren't like that. Like, me and my other buddy and the other guys who were there every day with me in the trenches, right? And in the little dog houses, cleaning them out because that's what we had to do as janitors. He says to me after hearing my conversation, man, was that a call about business? I'm about to get excited. Like, oh, you want to buy something? Like, I'm gonna say, yeah, why? He says, you sounded terrible. I'm like, man, wait a second, right? The born and raised in South Side of Chicago was about to come out at me, right? Because I'm in Carbondale at this point, 5 hours south. My instincts kicked in, like, bro, you don't know me like that. And I paused, so I didn't say that out loud, but that's how I felt. But at that point, again, I'd already begun this journey of personal development. So I started reading for the sake of reading, not for the sake of test, right? Which is different. And instead of getting upset, I said, what do you mean? Right? I asked a question. So instead of having this emotional reaction, I provided an intelligible response. And that response altered, again, my life to come for many years. So in his response, he said, you were very choppy. You used a lot of ahs and uhs, and it's like you were seeming like you were stuttering, like you weren't really confident in what you were saying. And it just, if I was on the other side of it, I wouldn't have bought from you. I said, oh, thanks. And then move right on. Right. Didn't ask any other questions because I'm still pissed, low key. Like, who the hell are you to tell me anything? But the fact that he said that, um, it pissed me off. And I went home that day. Uh, with prepaid legal, there are different ways that you can offer it. You can offer it to small businesses, you could offer it to individuals, you could offer it to groups. So in the school, to offer it to groups, somebody brought up Toastmasters because they said, well, hey, if you're not
Yeah.
used to speaking in public and you might have a little discomfort with public speaking, then you might want to check out Toastmasters. So somebody giving me a card. Well, here's this guy telling me that my presentation was garbage. And, garbage man telling me your presentation's garbage, the irony. I leave work that day, Rory. I scoured through everything, right? And I found that Toastmasters card. I looked up the website, and in Southern Illinois, there was only one club, unlike Chicago, which there's 100 clubs that meet just about every day of the week, usually every other week. Well, this club was one little club in Carbondale, Illinois, and they met once a week, every week. So I go the first time, and again, I'm in Southern Illinois. And for those of you who don't understand the reference, if you see this on YouTube and you look at me, you think Southern Illinois, we are not the same. Okay. So, outside of the university. So here I am, the youngest person in this club, and by all means, the most melanated person in this club. And boy, when I tell you, we had the best time ever. Again, I got outside of my comfort zone. I'm dealing with people that don't look like me. They were business owners, educators, attorneys, and I'm in this mixture of all these people whose only goal was common to mine, which was to get better at this thing that we suck at. And I still suck at it. I just suck at a higher level now.
Please. Please. I was about to compliment you on how well Toastmasters worked because I mean
I
you're a great speaker, man.
the, and people ask, and I tell them I pay homage to again where it come from. So for those that are out there that like having struggles with things, I recommend three things on a regular basis. One of them is Toastmasters. Uh, I'll share a quick story about Toastmasters that has nothing to do with Toastmasters again, but it's funny and it's relevant, so we're going to go there. But those three things that I share are Toastmasters, landmark education, and neurolinguistic programming. Those are three of the keys that I'd share. I've done a lot of training and all this stuff in corporate world, and I share those all the time. So Toastmasters. Well, in Southern Illinois, in Toastmasters, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud because then you can actually find the people that this took place with because several of them are still in the club today. And I'm going to go ahead and share the story because it has to deal with getting outside of your comfort zone. So not only was I uncomfortable speaking in public, and not that I wouldn't do it, I just wouldn't do it well. And we all have been out there. If we don't do something well, we don't, we're probably not going to do the thing.
Right.
Well, I didn't necessarily like it, but I forced myself to do it every single week. So for 3 years, I was at the Toastmasters meeting every week, and I may have missed 5 meetings in 3 years. That's why I sound the way I sound today. And again, long-winded story, right? But we've got a little bit more time. So for those again that are out there that want to sharpen up how they sound on the air, Toastmasters. Well, this one particular day in Toastmasters, we had gone to an it was a contest, an area contest. And after the contest, a Toastmaster or two had invited me to something called the Hash House Harriers. Had no clue what this was. Most people don't. It's a drinking club with a running problem. Well, so what they would do is Rory, I can't make this up. They chart a path around a city or a nature walk or something like that, and you'd have to run this path that the hares have charted out. Well, along this path, there are beer near signs, so there might be drinks close by, and there are symbols. And because this is a club for adults, the symbols were uh, like a W almost. And for anybody with an imagination, you can imagine what that symbol. Sorry, there's a little mosquito, and I just don't like them. Like, ooh, squirrel. Right? You can imagine what this adult version of a W would remind you of, and you'll really get it. If you don't get it, you'll get it by the time I say this next one. The other symbol was a helicopter. So the W symbol was for the women, and the helicopter was for the men. And when you get to that symbol, you have to perform as such. I'll let you use your imaginations as to what that performance looked like. Needless to say, it broadened my horizons to things that people do in Southern Illinois, and not just Southern Illinois, all over the world, because this is a global thing. Well, after that, another contest, another sit down, and this time there's this look from across the table, and two of the Toastmasters look at each other and say, "Do you think we should invite him?" And they look at me, and I'm like, "What the hell? What are you guys talking about here?" Mind you, I'm still in my 20s at this time, like early 20s. They say, "Well, we go to these clubs, these resorts, and we think you might enjoy it." I said, "What? I mean, what's the kicker, right? It's like a cabin." She's like, "Yeah, well, it's a cabin, and it's on a plot of land, right? 40 acres to be specific, and clothing is optional."
There's a whole different side of Toastmasters that
This is
people
a
don't know about.
whole different. Oh, so okay, disclaimer, everyone. This is not endorsed by Toastmasters in any way, shape, or form. They do not support the extracurricular activities that I'm sharing. Uh, and if you want a kick-ass club, go to the Southern Illinois Toastmasters, baby. 60-60-12. So I immediately, my personal development mind says, be open to opportunities. You never know. So of course I say, yes, I'm in. And I go, and clothing are optional. And by the time we pull up, the option went out the window. And I'm like, let's enjoy the space. Heated pools, outdoor showers. I got to play tennis in my flip-flops. That's it. And I mean, balls were flying everywhere. We were just having the best volleys ever. Apologies, Rory, if this was not the intention because you did not know this was coming on your show.
I
But
appreciate you giving me the out right there. Yeah, I mean, people are like, so how does this have to do with the podcast?
and again, I promise you, it'll all make sense, right? So those various levels of saying yes provided me with the confidence to get in front of people,
There you go.
the confidence to get in front of people, regardless of what I look like, because at the point in which you're wearing nothing, there is no status. Okay. The person with the $5,000 suit and the Rolex, when you're in your God-given suit, you operate with people differently. It's not about looking you up and down to pass judgment. It's about looking you in your eye and connecting with you as the being. So what I realize is there's such a difference in how you live when you're exposed to people who care about you and who care about your openness. So I'm forever thankful. Again, I don't want to give their names because, again, these are very, very prominent business people currently today. But I'm so thankful for them for those invites because, again, it truly altered and changed the direction of my life. Um, so much so. Now, this is a funny story. So we go back to this resort a second time, and the second time I take my girlfriend at the time, and we're taking a walk through nature. Side note, wear bug spray if you're going to walk through the forest, right? Because they bite you everywhere. Yeah. We had towels, right? So the
Okay. All
towels,
right.
if we needed to sit down, we did have towels. Well, we're walking by this, people have homes on these resorts. They, excuse me, and they live there part of the year. It's really liberating. I promise you should try it. Um, but what I noticed while we were walking, finishing our walk, was something that was really odd. There's this gentleman, had to be every bit of your late 50s, early 60s, and he's like falling off of the picnic table. And then he's falling off of the picnic table and he starts like this convulsing motion. I say to myself, oh, sorry, I'm gonna have to let this one fly. I said, oh shit, I think that guy's having a seizure. Well, I'd been CPR trained. I was in Boy Scouts, so I've gotten several merit badges for like first aid and life saving and stuff like that. So I know the basics of like what to do. And I go there and I have to hold him in a certain position as to not damage himself on this gravel and brick concrete like that's under his head from making these movements and shaking. And I held him until the ambulance got there. Now imagine the scene as an ambulance having to be buzzed into this private gated resort, right? It's 40 acres large. Don't Google that because you might find it in Missouri. But it's 40 acres large. You got to get buzzed in through the private gates. And here we are, two men laying on the ground. One's holding the other while the other is still like shaking and foaming. And it's just like this literally a life-changing and life-saving experience. So obviously once they got there, I let them take over. I put my towel back on and it touched me such that again, I almost forgot the type of place that I was in until I realized that people were coming in uniforms and I didn't have one. So that's what I mean when you expose yourself to other areas. It's such that you forget that this is even a thing, right? We were put on this planet, whatever your religious beliefs are, the story, the typical story, right, for those that are excuse me, geographically located in the United States is that Christianity is the norm. God created Adam and Eve, and they were on this Garden of Eden with no clothes, right? They didn't know what naked was until sin entered the story. In that space, you don't really know what it is to be nude because everybody's the same, right? And you're talking with people not as what you're wearing and passing judgment, but you're truly connecting with people as beings. Again, changed the entire direction of my life because I could then connect with people at a different level. And I don't care what you're wearing. I don't care if you're the CEO or the janitor, right? You have two eyes and you have this little stuff called vitreous humor that exists behind the eyeballs. That's where your soul hangs out and at least transmits all these messages through your brain as you perceive reality. Remember, I went to school for biological sciences, pre-med at that. And and that's what I gathered from those experiences that we're all human. We have the ability to connect if we choose. So then fast forward, right? Toastmasters took me to all these places. Prepaid Legal, which is Legal Shield now, told me that I could do a thing one time and ultimately get revenue, get paid over and over and over and over and over again. I was looking at my back office the other day and I still have memberships on the books from 2005, 2006. So I've been getting paid for
Nice.
20 years
Yeah.
off of something that I did one time way back then. Right now, I wish I did a million of those policies. Obviously, life would have been a little bit different, but still, I didn't have access to that information that residual income was even an offering growing up. Some people know about it from the time they're 7. Some people never hear about it when they die at 70. I'm just thankful that I got to learn about it when I did, so that as I understood insurance as a field, which prepaid legal in the state of Illinois was one of 16 states that required a license because they did consider it insurance. So I got my limited lines producer's license in 2005, which started my path into insurance, which ultimately led me to where I am today as the basis of why I started that podcast. So, we'll fast forward, skip out on some of the other stuff in there. My LinkedIn is there. Again, Paul H. Flowers Jr. You pop it into Google, everything's going to show up, right? The so kind of fast forwarding, I go through some corporate ups and downs, a lot of ups, a few downs, some lateral movements, and really see this insurance thing as a way to make a living and make a difference. It wasn't being done with the most integrity at a couple places that I'd worked. So I'd left those places and started my own company. 2017 was the first place that I left after being promoted several times, having all these accolades, just, still in my little virtual brag book today. Um, but I went and started Superior Insurance Advisors as a way to do it right the first time and to be more person focused versus profit focused. Fast forward a few more years, get into some consulting, still under my own umbrella, do some contracts with some pretty notable folks, end up getting licensed in all 50 states. Sold life insurance and health insurance in all 50 states, train people to sell life and health insurance in all 50 states. You Google Trustpilot and pop in Superior Insurance Advisors, you actually see some of those reviews. Um, www.paul.health, shameless plug. There's a folder that, again, I advise everyone to create that type of folder about themselves so that they don't have to tell the story, they can show it. And um, I move using those experiences, I move them into not just helping one person with insurance at a time, but then helping groups of people with insurance at a time. And again, for those of you that are listening to this in an audible only fashion, you may not remember, but I'll just remind you, I'm very melanated, strikingly handsome, some may say, but very melanated nonetheless. And in the field of insurance, I had a gentleman, and please, no one take offense to this, so warning, right? I'm going to say it. I had a gentleman tell me that the insurance industry was pale, male, and stale. He was a gentleman who was pale. And he's telling me this. So I'm like, holy shit, well, obviously you see it too, because, this is where I go back to my high school days. I was one of 4 in the honors program out of a total of, it was 800 something students. There might have been 90 something, maybe 120 people of color, right? So I was used to being in places and spaces where people didn't look like me. Fast forward to college, fast forward to Toastmasters. I'm used to being in places and spaces where people don't look like me. You get to contests with Toastmasters, you get to advance into universities. Again, getting more and more used to being around other people and not just, what we call white people. I don't like using colors like that because no one's actually white, no one's actually black. Um, it makes a difference in your comfort in dealing with people and seeing them for people, right? Not colors, which again, I just don't think is right. Um, so we're moving forward, and I get into this business space, and as I realize that on being able to help more than one person at a time on the group side of things, there aren't a lot of people that look like me, and certain companies are very, 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 very good at what they do, not good at making sure that everyone's introduced to the opportunity is the best way that I can put it. So with that, I'd gotten into the group side of the business, had some things told to me, they didn't quite get honored. And what I shared with you prior to us recording was you don't complain about things unless you're willing to change them. So at that time, I had this little brainchild idea. This was like 3 years ago that I'm going to start a podcast, and I'm going to talk to people about issues in the industry. Well, it's since transformed into essentially a place to a gain a little bit of notoriety. It's not about big me. It's really more about helping the people that I'm bringing on the show and spreading their wares. And I also learned that I could use that podcast to get leads for my business. So I said, okay, that seems like a good idea. Now, I still haven't focused on that aspect of podcasting, but about a year or so ago, I really started taking this podcasting thing seriously. Now, mind you, haven't recorded an episode, but I but I wrote it down.
That's a start.
That's a start, right? And I wrote it down on a green post-it note. Now, I'm not in my office now, like I'd share, which is why I'm using this funky virtual background because mine's not as pretty. My current one's not as pretty. But I had that post-it note on my corkboard for like a year. And it wasn't until this year, again, bringing full circle with my sister and learning from her, she said, I'm on like my 30 some odd episode. She's been working and building her particular business, which is she's a women's health nurse practitioner, and she educates people on how to enter the field of nursing. Because again, all of the information that's available to everyone isn't available to some. And she wanted to make sure that that information was available to some. So she started this podcast. And I would talk to her on a regular basis. She's like, yeah, I've got this guest coming on. I got this guest coming on. We're doing the recording. I'm doing the editing. And I would, continue my interest in wanting to do it. Still had my little sticky note on the corkboard, and I just didn't do it. Um, Fast forwarding again, just through some of the backstory, I ended up uh, getting married a few years ago, having two beautiful daughters. So now I've got three children, and life, life's, and those that get it, right? They say life's been lifing is a popular phrase in pop culture.
Sure.
Life definitely lifed with me to the tune of a family, a few children now. And it's like, when am I going to have time to do a podcast? Well, one day, um, in April, actually, of this year, I said, I'm going to do this podcast. I'm not going to make any more excuses. Even if I have to use my phone for the first episode, I'm going to sit down, put it in front of me, press the button, record it, and put it out. So I go to this little recording studio inside of the public library, and I did just that. And that was the birth of the Potpourri Place Podcast Show. It was literally me saying, I'm not going to procrastinate anymore. I hit a major milestone birthday just a few months before turning 40. And I said, if I keep doing this, not living into my fullest potential, not shining this light, and not ultimately being a beacon of light in a place and safe space for others to shine, what the hell am I doing here? Right? I'm just wasting time. And that day, I almost did it again, Roy. I almost did it again. I recorded the episode, 7.5, maybe 8 minutes. And I said, you know what? I can't put this episode out because someone says you've got to have 2 or 3 episodes when you first launch a podcast. So I'm gonna wait, right? And I'm gonna wait until I get 2 or 3 more episodes before I put out this podcast. And that other voice came in, Roy said, don't do that. Put it up right now. I'm like, no, 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 I can't. Yeah, Paul, put that damn episode on the internet right now. Okay, I got on Canva. I signed up for Buzzsprout, and I put a few edits, a little intro music, a little outgoing music, and I just say, you know what? Blank, blanket, right? Boom, press the button, and the Potpourri Place podcast was born. Um, I did the recording with my cell phone and a $20 lapel mic that I had from Amazon. I was on the free trial of Buzzsprout, so it didn't cost me anything. I was using and still am using the free version of CapCut. So it didn't cost me anything. I was using the trial version of Canva. So it didn't cost me anything to create the cover art and design. I literally made a podcast come from nothing, other than getting over that step of procrastination. This is in April. Fast forward not even 2 months. I've completed I've completed 3 seasons. I've shared two. So there are 26 episodes available. Within those first 2 months, my podcast reached 6 continents, 30 countries, over 250 cities. I've talked to everyone from the brand new consultant coach or executive coach to individuals managing $50 million real estate funds, uh, people who've got companies that are in 137 countries, I believe was one episode. And these are people that, though we might have only had a relatively limited interaction, that I still would call, if not really good associates, even a friend,
Right.
someone that I can reach out to, someone that I can connect with, someone that I can bounce ideas off of. One person in particular had Mark Victor Hansen as his uh, coach for launching his books, and we're setting up a time so that he can help me on my next book. Him, not Mark Victor Hansen, but the fact that that type of camaraderie exists, and it's from podcasting, right? From podcasting. A gentleman from one of my podcasts texted me the other day just to see how I was doing. Right? Hey, I hope those books are flying off the shelves, because he knew I was working on a couple of books at the same time. So, in this industry, it can really change your associations. It can really, if you choose to, change how you present yourself to the world, because ideally you'll care more about the other person. One of the things I often say on my show is, hey, it's your show. I'm just here to facilitate it. And I live by that, right? Because it's truly about that person, right? Their name's in the title, not mine, of that show, right? Yeah, it's Potpourri Place Podcast Show, but it's their show.
Yeah, right.
So that brings us again full circle to, for all those stories that seem like they had no place in space, I've asked people that have done far more than I have to be guests on my podcast, have far more public notoriety to be guests on my podcast. Again, if you don't ask, you don't receive. And they said yes. I've gotten on podcasts and asked questions that people have never asked these people before, because I'm now open to who they are as a being, right? So again, every one of these unique experiences and stories that I've shared has allowed me to podcast the way that I podcast. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's got to go and, bear all in order to have someone bare their soul on your show. And it might help. It might help. So, I'm going to pause for a sec, take a sip, keep my throat moist. And I know you got a question or two or 12 from everything that I've shared. Let me just be quiet now and allow you to do what we do on that side of this opportunity, and ask some questions, and I'll share some more.
I love it, man. I could not agree with you more. That is what this podcast is about, just like, a lot of others. This is the podcaster nation, and the entire point to this podcast is exactly what you're doing. And it's to take folks who have their own podcasts and put them in that chair and let them get personal and talk about themselves. Because, when you're in this seat, it's about your guest.
Mhm.
It's not about you. It's about the guest. And so a lot of podcasters never really get to, open up. They never really get to let their listeners hear, personal stuff about them. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do on this podcast, which is perfect and beautiful. So I, I appreciate everything you were sharing. You scared me a little at one point, but I'm like, you know what? I mean, hey, that's why I don't edit, because you never know where
Mhm.
you're going to get with Rory's podcast.
This is
So
it. This is true.
that's right. But no, but I love it, man. I really do. I am a little curious where the podcast came from. Everything that you talked about, especially the way you wove it all together, it all makes sense. I see it from the beginning and then the transition and another transition and another transition. It all makes sense to where you are. Uh, and then there's a podcast.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So I'm not seeing a transition to that. So I'm wondering
Gotcha.
what brought that to you to say, hey, podcasting. I mean, as opposed to all the other different mediums that are out there.
I was 9 years old, or 10. I usually forget the year. I was 9 or 10. And remember, my father died when I was 3.
Right.
So it's my mother that's taking me to go get my hair cut at these barbershops. I sit in the barbershop. She would leave me there for an hour, sometimes 2 hours at a time, just for the sake of being around all these men and to have the camaraderie and to hear the stories and to, talk stuff, basically, is what they would do. Well, of course, again, part of that story, like I shared, my mother said from the age of 7 to 17, all I heard was be a doctor, be a doctor, be a doctor. So by the time I'm in there getting my hair cut, when they ask me what I'm going to do, what do I say? I'm going to be a doctor.
Give me a doctor.
Well, one day I'm in there getting my hair cut, and the owner, his name was Hodge. He, is kind of proud of me as this young man that wants to be a doctor on the south side of Chicago. So he says, young man, tell him what you want to be, right? So some other gentleman in the store. Tell him what you want to be when you get older. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be a doctor. He said, no, 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 tell him, you got to really say it out loud, really share with them what and who you, what are you gonna do with your life? Yeah, I want to be a doctor and an obstetrician gynecologist, but real timid and humble, but more so timid about how I was sharing it. And he said to me, young man, it's a sad dog that doesn't wag its own tail. All right. Now, I'm like 9 or 10 years old. The hell does that mean? Right?
Right.
Disclaimer, subtitle, footnote, something, nothing. Okay. It's a sad dog that doesn't wag its own tail. Thanks for sharing. Well, 20 years later, I kid you not, 20 years later, he said something else to me, but that part didn't quite come true. Not, well, excuse me. It did. We're just in the receiving stages now. He told me that I was going to be a millionaire in my 30s. And then he told me about this sad dog that don't wag its own tail thing. So here I am getting to my 30s. And for whatever reason, this memory from 20 years ago pops up. I'm going to be a millionaire. And it's a sad dog that doesn't wag its own tail. Little did I know how closely intertwined those two things were. You see, a sad dog that doesn't wag its own tail is akin to a person that has this bright light that's very dim, that doesn't share it, that doesn't shine. So, how can you be a millionaire without shining your light? And yes, there are people that create these fun gadgets and pass them off or have ideas and get patents. Like, yeah, there's multiple ways to skin a cat. But in my world, I needed to shine my light. So here's the opportunity to shine my light by being this podcast host. Sorry, I'm reaching out for that mosquito. He just came back. So again, I had the idea for a year, and I finally said, you know what? It's time to shine my light. I know how to speak. I know how to connect. I love sharing, interacting, engaging. And what better way to do that on a regular and consistent basis with people that are all over the world that are not like me, that are not in my own backyard, than a podcast? I mean, think about it. What other medium can you connect with the person, learn their story, engage in live conversation,
Yeah.
and then take that and share it with everybody else that has access to the internet? I mean, yeah, you can make a movie. Okay. So some people might do it in movie form. I'm trying to think of something else. Um, Race car, no, boxing, no, sports. No, it's a podcast, right? It's a live conversation at the time that it's taking place. Sometimes people will stream them live and then have it recorded for future review, which I was a guest on one show that did exactly that. So that was interesting. But a podcast is something that can outlive you, much like a book. You author a book, and that book can outlive you. The moment you record that podcast, hit stop, and publish, it's for all intents and purposes out there forever. I don't see the internet going away at any point. Books are slowly becoming digitized. Libraries are slowly closing, though I will still author more books. Uh, Books will also outlive you, but that's not a live conversation that people can listen in on and see, right? They use their imaginations, which is great, to create what those characters are like in their minds. But here, you get to see the characters, you get to engage and feel the conversations as they grow and go in a number of directions. You almost can be inside the room with the person, especially when you can see them. You see, I can't see the characters from Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged because it was a fiction book. And even if for or if even if it were a nonfiction book, I likely wouldn't see those characters or by chance bump into them at an airport, right? Type of thing. As a podcast guest and host, I'm meeting people from all over the world. In fact, I'll be in Utah in a couple of weeks, and one of my guests live in Utah, Salt Lake City of all places, where the convention is that I'm going to. And sure enough, he's like, "Hey, when you are in the area, give me a call." So I put it in my calendar to reach out to him about a week before I get there, just to make sure that we keep that connection going. So now I'm actually going to be in their backyard, right? You and I are what, an hour or so away from one another
Yeah,
when
I
I'm
think
not
so.
on the road. We're going to sit down and have either a beverage or a meal. And that's something that's taken from online when we can share with others to also exercise in physical, life as we see it. So why podcasts? Why not a podcast? Right?
Great answer, man. I expected nothing less, to be honest with you. So, I mean, I love the answer. That was beautiful. The Potpourri Place. Let everybody know what they can expect when they tune in. What's your content? What do you do? That type of thing.
Certainly, multiple segments, new segments launching. I focused heavily on the entrepreneur space, so most of the episodes you hear now are the everyday entrepreneur. You'll also hear an episode or two from the C-suite connection. Again, those are various segments of the Potpourri Place podcast show. Let me start with the name, the Potpourri Place. It's a French origins, not that I parlez-vous français, but the potpourri was a play on my last name, which I used to get teased about in high school, and now I'm like flowers, right? So I thought about it, and I said, well, what's a mixture of us? And by us, I look at myself in the mirror talking and having this conversation with myself. What's a mixture of us? Well, what's a mixture of flowers? Potpourri, right? So why potpourri? Again, like I shared before, we're more than just what we do. We're more than our professions. We are parents. We are spouses. We are also entrepreneurs. We're spiritual beings. We are men. We are women. We have all these other designations and things and roles that we play in life that are more than just what we do. Thus, I wanted to make a podcast that resembles that. Yes, the C-suite connection has its own flavor to it. Typically, on that segment, I will be inviting individuals for companies that I do want to do business with, full disclaimer.
Nice.
I also want people to know what it's like to sit in that C-suite because many people in their lives, 99% of the people on this planet will never get that opportunity, right? Not that they can't, just that they may not choose to. For those that want to, they don't always have that clear path on how to get there. The direct guidance and mentorship, again, something that I missed growing up without a father. And I'd like to have a resource that can provide that to them as well. Thus, the C-suite connection segment. There's also a segment that's coming out called Author's Alley. That's for people who are
Cool.
authors that have authored a book or two or three, and we'll dive into the book. We'll dive into the thought process behind it, the creation of it, because believe it or not, there's several statistics out there, and I'll just throw one out that over 60% of the people, if you ask them, they'll let you know that they do want to write a book. But how many ever do it, right? How many ever do it? So the Author's Alley segment, I didn't want to launch until I'd completed my book. Well, I'd authored three since then. All three of them hit #1 on the bestsellers list on Amazon, which some people say is not a big deal. Hey, show me yours.
Right. Anybody who
Okay.
says that hasn't written one. I'll tell you
In
that.
that aspect, I was really glad to do that. So now I'm actually going to launch that segment of the show as well. But
Great.
to finish up on the name piece, potpourri, for those that aren't aware, again, it comes of French origin. It's basically a bunch of dried up flowers in a bowl. Okay. And those bunches of dried up flowers are various species of flowers represent the various aspects of who we are, which is what I was getting at. So that's the where, that's the why, I believe. And I think I answered that question without going too far off.
No, that was beautiful. So I was going to ask you about the name. I heard that in your intro, so I figured I better ask and, let you go ahead and tell everybody. But, you covered it. You've been a step ahead of me the entire day. So, I mean, it's been kind of nice because I can just kind of sit back here and drink my coffee and you're doing both their jobs, brother. So it's, you know, I've said this only a couple of times, but if I knew it was going to be this easy, I'd have brought a sandwich.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're a very easy guy to sit here and listen to. You got a great voice too, man. So I mean, the
I appreciate
Toastmasters, must have done quite a bit with you because I mean, you're crisp and you're smooth, and it's I could listen to you all day long.
it. I'm so thankful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, Dr. Rousey Smedley did something that changed our lives, so I'm really thankful for that gentleman. He's long since passed, but he created this back in 1926, 1924, or 26, one of those years. And 100 years later, it produces people that speak and not just talk,
Yeah.
right? That speak. So I enjoy speaking at this point. I enjoy speaking with you and speaking to your listeners.
I appreciate that. All right. In the interest of time, let me get my little corny question in. It's kind of like my Arnold Schwarzenegger "I'll be back" thing. I have to get it in, everything that I do.
Let's do it.
It's really, really tough. So, strap yourself in, get ready. Yeah. In terms of doing your podcast, what is it that you love the most about doing your podcast? And what is it that you just absolutely, positively hate the most about
Easy
doing your
question.
podcast? There
This
you
one won't take long to answer at all.
go.
Thing I love the most, pressing record, everything that happens after that until I press stop. Best part of it, the connection,
Nice.
the conversation, the questions, the camaraderie, all of it. That magical. What I absolutely hate about doing a podcast is the clipping and the downloading, the making sure that there's space available on my hard drive, and then the uploading and the creating of subtitles and hashtags, all this stuff in order to put it out there to make, then you got to make the clips. Then the clips have to be formatted for the right social media platform. And it's like, ah, and I know that there are services out there that do it. I've been entirely too frugal in order to reserve capital. I
Yeah.
say, well, let me do this myself. But in doing that, I'm glad to learn and know about how to do it and still do it for, pretty nominal budget so that as I train, I'm actually in the process of making these videos. I talked to my virtual assistant last week and told her, hey, I'm going to have some tasks for you. So I'm actually going to enroll someone else in the production, the post-production of my podcast as this third season. I finished doing all the editing for it. I'll use some of those as examples, but really starting with the fourth season, or actually the fifth. I think the fourth I committed to doing a solo season, just to promote some of the things that are relevant to my field of work.
Cool.
That I would do the next season where I'm having guests on the show and modify how I do it slightly, so that I can then train someone else to do everything after pressing record, pressing stop. Because at this point, that's all I want to do. Press record, press stop. Someone else is on it from the moment it's done, finished, to every clip, every hashtag, every subtitle and story, creating the captions,
Nice.
optimizing all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hand all that stuff off. But yeah, and I
Nice.
don't use. I typically don't use the word hate, so I'll just use I strongly dislike that portion,
Sure.
um, and I'm glad that I learned how to do it.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Hey, great answers. I knew you'd have great answers to that question. So, um, I don't normally do this, but I know you do it on your podcast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask what usually is my last question. It's not going to be my last question, and I'm going to give you a different last question. You ready for all this?
I'm all ready.
All right, here
Absolutely.
we go. So the normally last question, not the last question today, is what's your best piece of advice for podcasters who are not quite where you are and haven't learned what you've learned yet?
I killed that
You
mosquito.
got the mosquito.
That was not my advice. And we've been dealing with this for the hour. And that joker just caught right in front of me. And I apologize. I'm like a lizard. I had to get it.
You had to
Okay. So
get it.
now that that distraction is gone,
That's right. I got all your attention now.
listen,
We're good to
how do
go.
we look? Watch this. I'm going to tie it into your question, right? So, what's that piece of advice that I can give to all the podcasts that aren't quite where I am today?
Oh,
Just do it. Get the distractions out of your way and do the thing. When do you need to do the thing? Right now. I challenge anybody that has not started a podcast, that wants to start a podcast, to take out their phone and listen. You don't have to have had a year's worth of procrastination. If you wait 60 more seconds after getting this instruction, you're waiting too long. And I'll even help you to do it with AI. Get ChatGPT, use the free version. Say, hey, this is who I am. These are some of the things that I've done. I've got some really interesting ideas that I'd like to talk to and share with a global audience, and I want to turn it into a podcast. Come up with 4 or 5 different titles that exemplify what it is that I've done based on what I've just shared with you. Give me a couple of ideas for the second, third, and fourth shows. And for that first show, I simply want to introduce myself, share what the series is going to be about, and then put a quick script together that I can speak for maybe 6 to 8 minutes and get this out to the world and get it out to the world now, right? So if this is up on YouTube at some point, Roy, the listeners, you can press transcribe. You can literally see the words that I just spoke. You don't even have to write them down. Okay. Copy, pop it in the chat GPT, hit the button. It's going to come up with some stuff. Again, you have to add some in it because some of what I said involves you
right.
speaking to it in a very conversational way. But then from that point, take your phone. If you're on Team iPhone, awesome. If you're not, meh, there's still time. Okay. And point it, dust off your camera. So this is all like 30-second stuff. Clean off the lens so it's nice and clean. Look at it, press record. Right? Put it in selfie mode, press record. And read that script off of your laptop or whatever other device you have. Read the script verbatim if you need to. If you're not the person that's got this eclectic personality that ad libs at will, read it off the screen. Pop into Chat GPT, not Chat. Well, yeah, hell, you can do it in Chat GPT too. Hey, come up with a cover for my podcast, please. It'll come up with a cover, right? You got those people out there like, you can't let AI do everything. Yeah, you can waste your life and time figuring out every little meticulous detail, or you can get something done and refine it. Someone told me, don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. In other words, right, to get it perfect, which it'll never be perfect, you've got to do this and this and this and check this off, and it's got to be just right. Remember, I wasn't going to put that first episode out because I had to have 3 episodes. I couldn't just put out one.
Right.
Lies. Put out one. Watch where it goes. And if you, listen to the advice that I just shared, cost you nothing but a few minutes of time, right? Buzzsprout, I believe you can get the free version at no cost.
Yep.
Reach out to me and get the promo code. I don't even know if I have a promo code for it, but I'm just so used to referral codes. Reach out to me before you do it so I can get some credit for it, and somebody in the Buzzsprout world will like me. And you upload it, and it's live within what, a couple hours? So literally an
Yeah.
hour from now, you can be a podcast host. And from there, the sky's the limit. Because once you get over that initial hurdle of starting the thing, honestly, it gets a little addictive. Right? It,
Nice.
it really does. So do your first solo podcast, have your first guest on. You don't know who to have on as a guest, invite me. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to have all the time in the world, and it definitely won't be the length of this podcast, but we will make it very succinct, right? 15 to 20 minutes at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm up. Let's have a conversation and let's get your podcast started.
Nice. I love it. I love it. All right, and you alluded to it. I appreciate all the time you've given me today. I really, really do. I know this was
Absolutely.
kind of like a final appointment for both of us today, so we
Yes.
had a little time to go over our normal, times, and I appreciate you doing that. I appreciate you sharing your story and everything else that you brought today. I know everybody else does too that's listening to this.
Mhm.
Final question. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up, but we're going to do it, Paul H. Flowers Jr. style. And is there anything I didn't ask you? Is there anything that we talked about? Maybe you want to drive home a little bit more. Maybe one more nugget or something you want to leave with everybody, or one final thing you want to make a point about. The floor is yours for the last couple of minutes. Go for it.
Go. I appreciate that. First and foremost, thank you for providing the invite. Uh, for those that listen to Rory, he may or may not have, I don't know, but we were connected through Podmatch.
Hmm.
Shout out to Alex, who has put together a phenomenal platform to connect people all over the globe that are interested in doing this podcast thing. Uh, and if you've not already caught the nugget, it's gratitude. Gratitude. Um, I wake up every day and I say thank you. I am amazingly thankful for the things that I can see and the things that I cannot see, right? No one can see the internet. You can't, right? I don't care how many hard drives and data centers you visit, you can't see the internet. You can't see the air, the consciousness that we're breathing and inhaling. And I guarantee if you didn't have it, your life would be different. So it makes a difference to be thankful for those things, right? It makes a difference to be grateful in every aspect of your life. So in terms of the main thing that I'd share, which is, I won't say the only thing, but it's the most important thing for me, again, in terms of sharing for those that are listening and want to do this thing, be thankful you have the opportunity to listen to this show. And it's not for me, okay? I'm not that guy. Oh, thanks because you got the chance to listen to Paul. It's not that. If you are able to listen to this, and if you haven't started a podcast, you have a layout to get it done in an hour, right? And if you've actually taken that on, reach out to me, let me know. I will like it, listen to it, review it, right? And make sure I shout it out on my next show. Um, be grateful for the fact that Rory has continued to do this because it's not easy for him to set the schedule, to host the people, to ask the questions, to, get scared a little bit at what might come out on the other side of the microphone. And, if you're not thankful for him, why are you listening to his show? Right. So thank him. And those thanks, that gratitude comes by way of reviews and sharing. So share this episode, put a review on there, 5 stars, and share it with somebody who you know in or outside of this community that can relate to being a parent, a student, an employee, an entrepreneur, a spouse, a person of color, right? All these different areas that we touched on within this conversation, somebody can relate to. And the easiest way to show your gratitude for the host and the show is to share. So, with that, again, Roy, I'm just amazingly grateful to have had this conversation with you. Thank you to the Podcaster Nation community. And I'm entirely excited about listening to this episode afterwards and poking fun at myself.
I love that. What a great wrap up. I knew that was the right way to end this with you. So I knew you wouldn't let me down. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And, folks, we didn't even get into like half of the things we could have talked about here. I think that would take us another full episode probably to cover all the rest of your life. I appreciate you, sort of bringing it together, highlighting it, doing what you can. You've accomplished a lot, brother. And I mean, it's incredibly impressive, as are you. And
Thank you.
I love
Thank
your
you.
podcast. I can't wait to see where it goes. So, keep doing it. Keep
I
killing it.
appreciate it.
You got it.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks. That's been Paul H. Flowers Jr., from host of the Potpourri Place Podcast Show. This has been another fantastic episode of the Podcaster Nation. This is the podcast. It's about podcasters. It's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And I think we proved it again today. This is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.